Hey everyone, happy Monday. I am delighted today to have Nadhim Zahawi, Member of Parliament for Stratford-upon-Avon in the UK. Mr. Zahawi, how are you?
I'm really well, Evan. How are you?
I'm very good for a Monday, and my audience might be curious why I have a Member of Parliament here. You happen to be one of my favorite politicians on social media. You're a delight and so interesting to follow and engage with. For my American folks who may be curious about who you are and what you do, perhaps maybe introduce yourself as an MP in the UK.
Absolutely. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nadhim Zahawi, and Evan and I have been uh, mutual fans for quite a number of years, I think. I entered Parliament in 2010. And so I've been in Parliament for 13 years. Before that, I was the co-founder of YouGov.com, which is the research and polling organization that pioneered online market research in the UK and then took it to the US and around the world. I am the Member of Parliament for Shakespeare. I think it's the best seat in Parliament, and Stratford-on-Avon is somewhere I think many of Evan's followers would have either visited already, or if not, I encourage you to visit. We have the best theatre, and of course, the birthplace and the resting place of the greatest playwright, poet, and author that has ever existed in the great bard William Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I have to ask you. Let's start. What's your favorite Shakespeare play, or is there a favorite? Like asking which is your favorite child, but you must get this all the time.
I do, and in fact, it's one which, in Parliament, it is judged to be a jinx to quote from it or to name it. And that is the Scottish play Macbeth. I remember when I
Ah,
was selected for Stratford-on-Avon, I was asked about whether I could, quote from any of his great plays, and I delivered the quote from Act One, Scene One of The Three Witches. I hope you're not going to ask me to recite it now, but I did on the night in 2010.
well, it's refreshing to hear a politician recite Shakespeare. You wouldn't get that much in the U.S., I'm afraid. But let's not go there. Um, let's talk about your story because I'm fascinated. I'd almost, and don't take this the wrong way, call it, a true American story in a way. I mean, you were born in a very difficult, challenging place, and you went to the UK as an immigrant. Maybe recap that story because it's so relevant in these days with the
Very
world
much
in
so.
which we live.
Very much so. So I was born in Baghdad to Kurdish parents, and in 1978, my father got wind that the then Ba'athist regime under the emerging Saddam Hussein found him to be someone that not to their liking is probably the best way to describe it, and they were going to very likely arrest him for no other reason other than being Kurdish and not willing to belong to the
Mm,
one-party state, the Ba'ath Party, and so he fled to the UK, where we followed shortly after. I was 11 years old when I landed on these shores, and believe it or not, I could hardly speak a word of English when I arrived in the United Kingdom.
mm,
And my first few weeks in school were pretty painful. You know, when you're 11 years old,
wow.
you tend to have made some, certainly some significant friends by the time you're 11. And I couldn't quite understand why we were being wrenched away from, my small social circle in Iraq and coming to a strange place which was much colder, much wetter than the country I'd been used to. I used to hide at the back of the classroom because I didn't know much English, and I try and sort of string words together in my head to try and make up a sentence to try and join in the class discussion. And of course, by the time I've made the sentence in my head, the discussion in the classroom had moved on. And so in my early months in education, my teachers thought I had learning difficulties, and so
Oh,
they called my mother in to say, Nadia might struggle at education. But of course, children are pretty flexible, pretty malleable, and I learnt the language very quickly. Within about 8 months, I'd picked up the language. By the 12th month, I was pretty fluent as I'd begun to sort of read well and write well and think in the language and dream in the language. I very quickly worked out that this is probably the greatest country on earth because there were many people, certainly teachers, and others who were willing to help you and open doors for you once you begun to sort of explain to them, to communicate with them as to your hopes and fears and aspirations. And I guess I'm now with you, and I've had a most extraordinary life, both as an engineer out of University College London, then founding a business that I took public in the UK on the London Stock Exchange, and then as Member of Parliament, and of course, reaching number 11 Downing Street, where last summer I was made Chancellor of the Exchequer under Boris Johnson.
Well, it's an extraordinary story, and I'm really intrigued by your business and political background. I actually, you aren't aware of this, spent all of my 20s in the UK. My daughter was born in Cambridge. I was part of the semiconductor sort of design industry. And, the UK is and was, a rising star in that field. Um, Talk about the business of business in the UK these days. I mean, we've had a little bit of fading glory. The UK hasn't risen to the heights of a Silicon Valley or a Shenzhen on the global stage. Why is that, and what will it take to reinvigorate, the business landscape in the UK in this new world? What can be done to turn, the UK into an innovation hub for the world, not just, Europe or beyond?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, both in terms of building my own business and then taking it public, and then, of course, becoming a member of parliament. And in my early days as a backbencher, being on the business select committee in parliament, and then, of course, being a junior minister in the department for business. I've tried to sort of really think through a lot of those issues as to how to make ourselves, both the most attractive place to start and build a business. And I think
Mm,
we've done some really significant things like, you can now set up a business in the UK within 7 days. I like to see it happen in 7 hours. There's no reason why it can't. And some of
mm,
countries around the world can do that now pretty efficiently. I think where we've sort of, I guess, lacked or lagged behind, I should say, is we're very good at startup capital. The landscape here, the ecosystem is pretty good at funding startups. It's really once you get to that mid cap size, it's very hard to make the leap in the UK to large cap in terms of the depth of funding that you guys have in Silicon Valley. I remember when I bought the reason YouGov became a unicorn effectively here in the UK is we bought a business in Palo Alto, a small business called Polymetrics that became the sort of the foundations of YouGov America, which now sort of leads
mm,
the YouGov family. Um, is there is real depth in funding for that sort of mid cap where you need more than the sort of 5 to 10 million, where you're a sort of 50 to 250 million, maybe more, of funding required to really build out and scale. And of course, the other thing which we can't do much about is the size of the market. We are a mid-market nation. Population of about 70 plus million versus obviously a large market such as the US, where it's much easier to obviously scale once you've developed your idea and commercialized it. Uh, the other reason I think is cultural, which is many sort of family-owned businesses in the UK sell out too early
mm,
and don't really. The Germans are very good. They've got the sort of Mittelstand, where these are
mm,
significant family businesses that continue to grow and to exist in that family ecosystem. Whereas British business entrepreneurs tend to sell out and will go off and play some golf and do other stuff. The US is probably, and this is a generalization, which is always dangerous. But the US startups, they sell out and they start their next startup
mm,
and go on. I guess where I think there is potential for growth for us If you look at what the Prime Minister's just done, Rishi Sunak, I think, has been very smart at holding the AI.
Oh no, we lost you.
I just cut out.
Yeah, you're back. So all good.
The AI summit in the UK, I think, was a significant triumph
Mm.
for the Prime
In
Minister.
Bletchley, of all places, the amazing Bletchley
Absolutely,
Park.
absolutely, and many who attended came back to and fed back to me to say, and these.
Oh, I've lost you again. Oh, I'm sorry, I've lost your audio. Let's see. This is the joy of live streaming. So technical difficulty here. Let's try it again. Oh, do I have you here? No. The beauty of this is we'll get it edited out in post, as they say. But in the meantime, we will do some charades.
Hello, can you
Hello,
hear me?
you're back. So,
Sorry about
yes.
that. Forgive me.
No, not at all. The beauty
It's a
of
tech.
technology. But you were
Exactly.
talking about, some of the policies around startup creation and building a flywheel of startups. And then we got into Bletchley Park's, amazing AI summit. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
I mean, I think the AI summit demonstrates the potential for the UK, both in terms of a landscape where legislators, government really do get it, and are both flexible enough to allow innovation to happen, whilst at the same time taking very seriously sort of the responsibility of government to create the rules of the road that are proportionate and appropriate. And so I think that's a good thing for the United Kingdom. I think in terms of if you think about the distribution infrastructure around the world, that's always going to be dominated by very large economies, whether it's the US
Mm,
with Meta and Alphabet and Apple and others, or of course China with WeChat and TikTok and others, where we I think have a significant role to play, and also I guess a little bit of an advantage is in the creative industries. If you look at
mm,
content creation, I would certainly hazard a guess, a bet that the UK is probably best placed in terms of its creativity to be producers of global content at scale. And I think that's a real opportunity for us here in the UK, whether it's in media, music, or elsewhere. So there's huge potential for that. And of course, 80% of our economy is service led. And I think with the advent of AI and the sort of the development of that, you can see leveraging a service-based economy much more globally as something that is advantageous to us. What we need to do as I guess legislators, as government, is look at everything from our tax base to ease of doing business to our infrastructure, whether it be airports, ports,
mm.
railroad, and technology infrastructure, digital infrastructure, to be able to accommodate and be the best place to welcome some of the best people in the world. I remember when I was Chancellor of the Exchequer, Eric Schmidt reached out to me to say, I think the UK and the US will become the sort of the anchors for the new AI industry, and he wanted to spend his time and energy and money getting PhDs from across Europe and the rest of the world to relocate to the UK. Because he, quite rightly had identified the UK as probably one of the best places for the industry.
Well, as an Anglophile and someone who lived in the UK for 8 years, it is a wonderful place to live. And speaking of education, you've had an extraordinary education, and I know you talk a lot about education at all levels. You're known, of course, for your elite institutions. We won't name them all, but there are many. But what's next on the education front for the UK? And what about business and education? How can we how can you not just mint these PhDs that are designing AI systems, but uh, business leaders of all kinds?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, I've served in a number of departments in government. The one I love the most is the Department of Education. I was there as a junior minister in that department, and then was fortunate enough to lead the department as Secretary of State for Education for about a year under the Prime Ministership of Boris Johnson. And I think, in many ways, probably the most important piece of innovation in education that we are rolling out in the United Kingdom is the lifelong learning entitlement. So,
Mm,
um, anyone over the age of 18, we will stand behind you. And if you choose to reskill, upskill, um, up to 4 years of university level education, you can take it as a whole or in modules, and the government will back you
wow.
where we will basically lend you the funds to be able to do that. And it's something that we're rolling out. It'll roll out from sort of 2024 and then 2025 onwards. Because my very strong view, and I did a session while I was education secretary with Sal Khan of Khan Academies
Mm,
at Founders Forum here in the UK. That I think the future of education will be modular, where people will learn throughout their whole life. They will have the ability to do that because of the technologies that are emerging. And I think any nation that embraces that early on will succeed. If you look at what Google's done with Google certificates, it's really quite
mm,
revolutionary. And again, I think that's the direction of travel for the British educational institutions. If you look at what the LSE is doing on modular education, it really is quite something that we are leaning in both. If you look at the skills agenda as well, so we've introduced something called T levels here, which is at one T level is the equivalent of three A levels, where you can take a T level in technology and go and work at Microsoft without needing to go to university, or you can go to university. 90 of our universities now accept T levelers as well as A
wow.
levels. So there's a lot of work that is well evidenced in terms of where I think education is heading towards. At school level, I think probably the most important thing that you can teach young minds is critical curiosity. I think
Mm,
if you think of again, the emergence of AI, the ability to uh, be able to ask questions of the technology, you need the sort of the foundation of, say, for example, economics 101, to then allow you to be curious and critical and prompt the technology to obviously help you advance your knowledge is going to be crucial in the way we teach in our schools.
I love that. That's so refreshing. Um, so when you founded YouGov, you were quite ahead of the curve in terms of data analytics and digital approach to quite an old industry of political polling. What are your thoughts on the digitization of government and making it more effective and efficient and value added to citizens, whether they're on their mobile or at home? You must have strong views on making government better and getting rid of some of the legacy processes and systems and infrastructures that have gone back, wow, hundreds of years in your case, at least decades in the US.
Very true. And I've got to tell you, I went back to my old alma mater at UCL when I took the company public back in '05, and they asked me to do a lecture to the UCL with Stanford of young postgrads and undergrads who wanted to set up businesses. And I opened by saying, look, if you set up a business to make money, you'll probably fail. There's no correlation between your desire to make money and success. But if you start a business because you want to change the world, you want to make the best operating system or hardware, whether it's Jobs or Zuckerberg or Gates, they didn't set up a business to make money. They set up to create the best operating system or the best social network. And it was the same for us at YouGov. The name YouGov is the amalgam of two words, you govern. And it's, in the days
Mm,
when in 1999, 2000, no one did anything online in terms of payments or giving their opinion. And the idea was essentially that the technology, this network that is going to link us all up together, was going to tilt the balance towards we the people, hence the name YouGov, consumer democracy. And then corporates and the executive government are going to have to listen to us. No taxation without representation, Boston Tea Party type romantic view of the world. And of course, because we were so passionate about it, the byproduct was, obviously accurate polling and therefore financial success. But nevertheless, it was a passion to do things much better. I guess where to the sort of the center of your question, where I think government will have to do better, and in fact be a great lever for reforming how we deliver services, how government delivers, is data. But I would link data with transparency. My
mm,
experience of delivering the vaccine program in the United Kingdom was that we needed to share the data on a daily basis with the nation. We'd ask people to stay at home, to lock down. You couldn't just leave them blind to what we were doing, how many people were vaccinating, how well we were vaccinating. And actually, that experience leads me to believe passionately that the way you reform complex systems, and every department of government is a complex system, it's bigger than a FTSE 100 company, whether it's
mm.
education or health. The way you reform complex systems is by opening them up and sharing the data, being transparent, because there'll be plenty of people around the world. Some people call them geeks, who will then analyze that data and of course challenge you on your performance. But it's the best way to reform complex systems is data and transparency, and that's what I used to drive through every department that I ran in government. Because let me give you an example. When we were vaccinating and obviously sharing the data and publishing it, uh, very quickly, some in the media could see that in the postcodes around North London and Tottenham, there were very low uptake of vaccine
Mm.
amongst particular communities. Now, the knee-jerk reaction would have been that to say, well, maybe those communities, don't want to give their details, they want to give their address or their email, and so therefore we should have more walk-in centres without questions asked, and we just vaccinate them. When we did the analytics on this, and we had Palantir deliver a fantastic piece of technology for us with Foundry, we discovered that we had more walk-in centres within 5 minutes walk in Stratford-on-Avon, where we had very high vaccine uptake. Then there were more in those postcodes in Tottenham than there were in Stratford-on-Avon. And therefore, we could have spent hundreds of millions putting more vaccine centres that are walk-in centres. Actually, the
Wow.
problem when we went back and dug beneath the data was cultural. Many of these communities had huge suspicion of big pharma and of government, and so we then did more research and discovered that what we needed to do was have more ambassadors from the community who'd been vaccinated, who would then go door to door, explaining how we develop a vaccine and the safety around vaccines. And so I am passionate about this, that what you really want to do is open up data and share it with the world. And that's how you reform government service delivery.
Wow. Well, that was truly a mic drop moment. It's so refreshing to speak with a politician who not only understands people, but technology and entrepreneurism and business and the things that impact us so importantly in this new economy. I know you're a busy man. I'll let you get back to work. This one last question, and we're not going to get into the weighty topics of the day, Ukraine and the Middle East and all the things that you'll be right back to. But how do you manage your own personal mental health and sanity through these difficult times? I feel sometimes I have the weight of the world on my shoulders and I'm just watching CNN. How do you deal with these heady issues and keeping your mental health and sanity through these tough times?
They are heavy, and you're absolutely right. You know, we have war on our continent here in
Mm,
Europe, and it's a pretty brutal and in many ways unnecessary war. You know, very much the aggression of one man, of Putin. You know,
mm,
attacking a country that his country was a signatory to guarantee their safety and security when they gave up their nuclear arsenal in the Ukraine. And of course, the dark days we're experiencing in the Middle East with a terrorist attack on Israel, and of course dealing with Hamas, and ultimately, hopefully, one day reaching a place where we have a truly two-state solution with the Palestinians feeling that they really have got their own
mm,
country and independence. That's the only way we're going to secure the region, in my view. But the way I deal with it is it's two-tiered. One is by leaning in wherever I can. If I think I can make a difference, if I think I can help, whether it's in the Middle East or in my work in Europe. But the best way, Evan, I have found is walking. I try and walk
mm,
everywhere. Walking is not
mm,
just good for you physically, but mentally. I have to say,
mm,
it is one of the best ways I find to help me cope with some of these really difficult issues and difficult time that the world is going through at the moment. It is the healthiest thing, and I take these things quite seriously. I try and walk everywhere. From home to Parliament, from Parliament to my next appointment, wherever I can, I try and walk. And actually, it is incredibly healthy to make sure that you walk at least 20,000 steps a day.
Wow, well, that's quite an ambitious goal. I'm going to take you up on that. Of course, you have the joy of walking around the beautiful city of Stratford-upon-Avon, incredible history and architecture. Thanks so much, sir, for joining us and sharing just a few of your insights and experiences here.
Great to see you, and thank you. Keep doing the great work you're doing.
All right. Thanks so